Dr. Veltara Sin pressed her pale blue hands against the viewing port of the orbital research station and watched her world end. Far below on the planet's surface, bright flashes of energy lit up the archaeological dig site where her team had been working just 6 hours ago. Each flash meant another one of her colleagues was dead. The Catherian scientists' 4 eyes tracked the movement of dark shapes across the planet's surface. The ancient war machines moved like hunting animals, swift and deadly. They had emerged from the underground complex her team had so carefully excavated, bringing death with them from a civilization that had vanished millions of years ago. Her communicator crackled with static. "Dr. Sin, this is Commander Korveth aboard the defense cruiser Starlight's Grace. We're pulling back to the outer system. The machines have adapted to our energy weapons. They're learning from every engagement." Veltara's throat sacs fluttered with fear. The Catherian military was known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and elegant solutions to problems. If they were retreating, the situation was far worse than she had imagined. "Commander, what about the evacuation shuttles? There are still research teams on the surface." A long pause filled the comm channel. When Korveth spoke again, his voice was heavy with grief. "Dr. Sin, the last shuttle was destroyed 20 minutes ago. The machines targeted the engines first, then methodically eliminated the survivors. We've lost contact with all ground teams." Through the viewing port, Veltara watched another flash of light mark the end of someone she had known for decades. Dr. Rendal, who had discovered the first intact predecessor artifact. Professor Yuvna, who had trained half the xenoarchaeologists in the sector. All gone because she had insisted they dig deeper, explore further, unlock the secrets of the ancient ruins the excavation had started 3 months ago when deep scans revealed a massive structure buried beneath the surface of Kepler 442c. The predecessor civilization fascinated scholars across the galaxy. They had built incredible technologies, conquered vast regions of space, and then simply vanished without explanation. Most of their ruins were empty shells, picked clean by millions of years of decay. But this site was different. The underground complex was intact, preserved by some kind of stasis field that had kept it unchanged since the day its builders disappeared. Veltara's team had been the first to breach the outer chambers, finding corridors lined with strange metals and walls covered in symbols that no known language database could translate. The machines had been dormant when they found them, sleek angular constructs the size of ground vehicles arranged in perfect rows in vast storage chambers. Her team had cataloged dozens of them, taking careful measurements and holographic records. The machines showed no signs of power sources or active systems. They seemed like museum pieces, relics of an ancient war. Everything changed when Dr. Rendal activated what they thought was a simple lighting system. The machines had awakened instantly, their dark hulls glowing with malevolent energy. The first kill had been silent and efficient. Dr. Rendal simply ceased to exist, vaporized by a beam of coherent energy that left no trace behind. The surviving team members had tried to retreat, but the machines were faster. They poured out of the storage chambers like a mechanical flood, spreading through the complex and then emerging onto the planet's surface. Each machine seemed to learn from the others, sharing tactical information and adapting to every defense the research team tried to employ. Veltara had barely escaped to the orbital station, using an emergency transport pod, while the machines focused on larger targets. From space, she had watched the systematic destruction of the dig site, then the arrival of the Catherian defense fleet, and finally the impossible sight of that same fleet being driven back by enemies they couldn't understand or counter. "Dr. Sin," Commander Korveth's voice cut through her memories. "I'm receiving orders from Catherian High Command. They're declaring this system a quarantine zone. No vessels are to approach within 10 light years. They're abandoning us?" Veltara's voice rose to a shriek that hurt her own throat sacs. "The machines have begun constructing some kind of transmission array on the planet's surface. Our analysts believe they're trying to send signals to other predecessor sites throughout the galaxy. If they succeed in awakening more of these weapons..." Korveth's words trailed off, but the implication was clear. Veltara slumped against the viewing port. The Catherians prided themselves on being a peaceful species, explorers and scientists rather than warriors. Their military existed mainly to protect trade routes and respond to natural disasters. They had never encountered anything like these ancient killing machines. "There has to be something we can do," she whispered. "Some way to stop them." I'm sorry, Dr. Sin. My orders are to withdraw all Catherian assets from this system immediately. The risk of contamination is too great. The communication channel went silent. Through the viewing port, Veltara watched the last Catherian warship accelerate away from the planet, its elegant curves growing smaller until it disappeared into hyperspace. She was alone with the monster she had awakened. The research station's computer chimed softly. Dr. Sin, I am detecting increased energy readings from the planetary surface. The mechanical constructs appear to be expanding their operational perimeter. Veltara pulled up the sensor displays on her workstation. The machines had spread across half the continent, establishing what looked like mining operations and construction sites. Worse, the computer was right about the transmission array. A massive structure was growing near the original dig site, its crystalline spires reaching toward space. She opened an emergency broadcast channel and began transmitting on all known frequencies. The message was simple and desperate. Unknown threat, request immediate military assistance, coordinates attached. She had no idea if anyone would receive it, or if they would care about the fate of one Catherian scientist and her dead colleagues. Hours passed. The machines continued their work with mechanical efficiency, building structures whose purpose she could only guess at. Each new construction seemed more advanced than the last, as if the ancient technology was upgrading itself with each passing moment. The station's computer chimed again. Dr. Sin, I am detecting an approaching vessel at the edge of the system. Veltara's heart leaped with hope. Catherian? Negative. The ship configuration does not match any known design in my databases. However, it appears to be responding to your distress signal. On the sensor display, a single contact moved toward the inner system. The ship's design was unlike anything Veltara had ever seen. Where Catherian vessels were smooth and graceful, this newcomer was angular and brutal, its hull bristling with what could only be weapon emplacements. Her communicator crackled to life with an alien voice speaking accented but understandable galactic standard. Research Station, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Hadean's Gate. We received your distress call. What's your current status? The voice was calm, almost casual, despite the obvious signs of destruction throughout the system. Veltara found herself both relieved and terrified by the newcomer's composure. Captain Vasquez, this is Dr. Veltara Sin of the Catherian Research Collective. We have awakened something that should have stayed buried. Ancient war machines are active on the planet's surface, and they're building some kind of transmission array. Our military has withdrawn, declaring the system too dangerous. A pause. Then understood, Doctor. We're coming to your position. Maintain your current orbit and prepare to brief us on the tactical situation. As the alien warship drew closer, Veltara wondered what kind of species would willingly approach a threat that had driven off the entire Catherian defense fleet. She was about to find out. Captain. Elena Vasquez studied the alien distress signal on her command screen, while the UES Hadean's Gate drifted through a field of cosmic radiation that would have fried the electronics of most civilian vessels. The ship's hull groaned softly as it absorbed another wave of high-energy particles, a sound that had become as familiar as breathing to her crew. Interesting, she murmured, scrolling through the translated message. Marcus, what do you make of this? First Officer Marcus Chen looked up from his tactical station, his scarred face illuminated by the glow of multiple displays. Like everyone aboard the Hadean's Gate, he bore the marks of humanity's recent war with the Torvan Empire. Unlike most veterans, he had volunteered for this assignment specifically because he couldn't adapt to peacetime. Ancient war machines, Captain. Sounds like our kind of problem. Marcus pulled up a holographic display showing the Catherian system. The transmitting species appears to be the Catherians. They're listed in our database as peaceful explorers, primarily scientists and traders. No significant military capability. Elena nodded. The Catherians were typical of most galactic civilizations. Advanced technology focused on peaceful applications, elegant solutions to complex problems, and a complete inability to handle genuine threats. They had never experienced anything like humanity's brutal history of warfare. Bones, what's your analysis? Elena addressed the ship's AI, whose official designation was too long for practical use. The crew had nicknamed it after an ancient human doctor, though this AI was more concerned with dealing death than preserving life. The AI's voice filled the bridge with its characteristic dry tone. Captain, based on the energy signatures detected by Catherian sensors, These machines represent significant combat capability. Their adaptive nature suggests they were designed by a species with extensive military experience. Standard galactic fleet tactics would be ineffective against such opponents. Sergeant Major Rodriguez looked up from the weapons console. Captain, with respect, these Catherians don't know what they're dealing with. They've probably never seen real combat. To them, a mining dispute is a major conflict, Elena smiled grimly. Rodriguez was right. Humanity had spent most of its history fighting itself, developing weapons and tactics through countless wars. The recent conflict with the Torvan Empire had simply been the latest in a long line of struggles that had shaped human military doctrine. Bones, calculate our travel time to the Catherian system. 17 hours at maximum velocity, Captain. However, I should note that responding alone places us at significant tactical disadvantage. These machines appear to have eliminated an entire Catherian defense fleet. Exactly why we're going alone, Elena said. If these things are as dangerous as they seem, bringing a fleet would just give them more targets to learn from. Better to send one ship with a crew that specializes in impossible situations. She looked around her bridge at the collection of scarred veterans who had followed her into the outer veil. Each had volunteered for this mission because they couldn't handle civilian life after the war. They were the kind of soldiers who thrived in environments where death was a constant companion. Besides, Elena continued, we've spent 3 years out here mapping cosmic anomalies and surviving in conditions that would kill most people. We're exactly the right crew for this job. Lieutenant Kim spoke up from the communication station. Captain, should we request support from Fleet Command? Elena shook her head. By the time we could get reinforcements, whatever these machines are building will be complete. No, we handle this ourselves. Marcus, plot a course for the Catherian system. Bones, begin calculating tactical scenarios based on the available data. Acknowledged, Captain. Course laid in. As the Hadean's gate turned toward its destination, Elena reviewed what they knew about the situation. Ancient machines awakened by accident, systematically destroying everything in their path while building some kind of transmission array. The description reminded her of old human legends about sleeping monsters best left undisturbed. The ship's intercom crackled to life. All hands, this is the captain. We've received a distress call from an alien species under attack by ancient war machines. We're responding alone because the situation requires specialists in hostile environments. Prepare for combat operations. Elena cut the channel and walked to the observation deck, where she could see the stars streaming past as the ship accelerated toward hyperspace. The outer veil was humanity's frontier, a region of space so dangerous that most civilized species avoided it entirely. Cosmic storms, gravitational anomalies, and radiation fields made navigation nearly impossible for anyone without extensive experience. It was perfect for humans. Marcus joined her at the viewing port. Captain, I've been thinking about these machines. If they're really adapting to each encounter, conventional tactics won't work. Agreed. What do you suggest? We make the environment hostile to both sides. These machines were built to fight in normal conditions against civilized opponents. They probably weren't designed to handle the kind of warfare humans consider routine. Elena smiled. Human military doctrine had developed around the principle that if you couldn't win through superior technology, you made the battlefield so dangerous that survival became more important than victory. It was a strategy that had served them well against the Torvans. Start pulling files on our outer veil operations. I want to review every unconventional tactic we've used out here. If these machines want to learn from combat experience, we'll give them lessons they won't forget. The Hadean's gate jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew of professional survivors toward a confrontation that would define humanity's place in galactic society. Behind them, the cosmic radiation of the outer veil continued its deadly dance, indifferent to the departure of the only ship that had ever called such a hostile place home. Hours into the journey, Elena found herself in the ship's armory, reviewing their weapons inventory with Rodriguez. The sergeant major was examining a particular nasty device that most civilized species would consider a war crime. Captain, we've got enough here to level a small city, but if these machines are adaptive, we need to be careful about showing them our capabilities too early. Agreed. We hit them with everything we've got, but we make sure they don't survive to report back to their controllers. Elena picked up a weapon that looked like it belonged in a museum of human warfare. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Rodriguez grinned, his scarred face transforming into something that would have terrified most aliens. Captain, I've been waiting 3 years for a real fight. These machines picked the wrong species to mess with. As the ship continued toward its destination, the crew prepared for combat with the methodical efficiency of professionals who had survived situations that killed most soldiers. They checked weapons, reviewed tactical data, and made peace with the possibility that they might not return from this mission. None of them considered retreat. They were humans, and humans didn't abandon people in need, even if those people were aliens they had never met. It was a principle that had cost their species dearly throughout history, but it was also what made them uniquely suited to handle threats that overwhelmed more rational civilizations. The Hadean's Gate dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Cytherian system, its sensors immediately detecting the energy signatures of the ancient machines. On the bridge, Elena watched the tactical display update with targets moving across the planet's surface. "Well," she said quietly, "time to see what these machines are really made of." The UES Hadean's Gate emerged from hyperspace into a graveyard. Captain Elena Vasquez watched her tactical display populate with debris fields that had once been Cytherian warships. The elegant vessels lay broken in space, their graceful curves blackened by weapons fire that had burned through their advanced shielding like paper. "Jesus," whispered Lieutenant Kim from the communication station. "They didn't stand a chance." Elena studied the destruction with professional interest. The Cytherian ships had died in neat formations, suggesting they had maintained military discipline even as they were systematically destroyed. Scorch marks on the hulls showed that the machines had targeted specific systems first, disabling weapons and engines before finishing off the crews. "Captain," Marcus called from his station, "I'm reading one life sign on the research station in high orbit. Looks like we have a survivor. Open a channel." The main screen flickered to life, showing a blue-skinned alien with 4 large eyes and what appeared to be breathing slits along her neck. Dr. Veltara Sin looked exhausted and terrified, but she managed to maintain scientific composure as she stared at the human warship. "Dr. Sin, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Hadean's Gate. We received your distress call. Are you injured?" "Captain Vasquez," the alien's voice carried a musical quality despite her obvious fear. I am unharmed, but my entire team is dead. The machines we awakened have been active for 8 hours now. They've destroyed the Cytherian defense fleet and are building some kind of transmission array on the planet's surface." Elena nodded calmly, as if discussing the weather rather than an existential threat. "Doctor, we'll need a full tactical briefing. Can you transmit your sensor data?" As the information flowed to the Hadean's Gate, Bones began analyzing the machine capabilities. The AI's findings were disturbing. "Captain, these constructs demonstrate adaptive learning algorithms. Each engagement with Cytherian forces resulted in improved countermeasures. They appear to be sharing tactical data through some form of quantum communication." "How many active units?" Elena asked. "Current count shows 47 individual machines on the planetary surface, with more emerging from the underground complex every hour. They've established mining operations and construction sites across a 300-kilometer radius." Elena studied the tactical display while her crew ran through combat preparations. With practiced efficiency, the machines moved in coordinated patterns, suggesting a hive-mind intelligence directing their actions. Worse, they were clearly building toward some larger goal. "Captain," Dr. Sin's voice carried across the comm channel, "your ship design is unlike anything in our databases. What species are you?" "Human, Doctor. We're from a planet called Earth, about 40 light-years from here." Veltara's 4 eyes widened in surprise. "Humans? But you're not listed in any galactic civilization registry. How did you develop faster-than-light travel?" Elena smiled grimly. "The hard way, Doctor. We had some disagreements with neighbors who thought our planet would make a nice colony. We convinced them otherwise." Before Veltara could respond, the ship's proximity alarms began sounding. Marcus looked up from his console with grim satisfaction. "Captain, we've got incoming." 5 machines approaching from the planet. "They've detected our presence, finally," Elena said. "All right, people, let's see what these antiques can do. Rodriguez, weapons free. Kim, record everything for analysis. If these things are adaptive, we need to understand their learning process." The 5 machines appeared on the main screen as they cleared the planet's atmosphere. They were sleek, angular craft about the size of fighter jets, their dark hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Energy readings showed they were armed with the same weapons that had destroyed the Kytherian fleet. "They're moving to intercept," Marcus reported. "Speed is increasing beyond normal propulsion parameters. I think they're manipulating local gravitational fields." Elena watched the incoming hostiles with professional interest. "Bones analysis? The machines are approaching in a standard attack formation, consistent with conventional tactical doctrine. They appear to be treating us as another Kytherian vessel." "Big mistake," Elena said. "Rodriguez, target the lead machine. Fire when ready." The Hadean's Gate's main gun spoke with the voice of human warfare. Instead of the elegant energy beams favored by most galactic civilizations, the weapon fired a stream of accelerated metal slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles tore through the lead machine's hull like tissue paper, reducing it to glowing debris in seconds. The remaining 4 machines immediately changed their approach, spreading out and adjusting their defensive systems. Energy shields flickered to life around their hulls, calibrated to deflect the kind of beam weapons the Kytherians had used. "They're adapting," Marcus observed. "Shields are configured against energy weapons. Good thing we don't rely on those," Elena said. "Rodriguez, switch to kinetic penetrators. Full spread." The Hadean's Gate's secondary weapons opened fire, launching a volley of solid projectiles that ignored the machine's energy shields entirely. 2 more machines disintegrated under the bombardment, their adaptive defenses useless against simple chunks of metal moving at tremendous velocity. The surviving machines attempted to retreat, but Elena wasn't finished with them. "Kim, deploy the mines. Let's see how they handle area denial weapons." A spread of small devices erupted from the ship's missile tubes, dispersing in a wide pattern around the fleeing machines. The devices weren't sophisticated AI-guided weapons or elegant energy constructs. They were simple explosive charges that detonated when anything came within range. The last 2 machines ran straight into the minefield, triggering a series of explosions that left nothing but cooling metal fragments. "Engagement complete," Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. "All hostiles destroyed." Elena watched the debris cloud expand, but her expression remained serious. "That was too easy." Bones' analysis of their tactics? The machines employed standard interceptor doctrine, consistent with defending against conventional spacecraft. They showed no adaptation to our kinetic weapons or area denial tactics. This suggests they were operating on baseline programming, rather than accumulated combat experience. Which means they were scouts, Elena concluded. The real threat is still down there. On the comm channel, Dr. Sin's voice carried a mixture of amazement and terror. "Captain Vasquez, I've never seen combat like that. Your weapons, they're so primitive but so effective." Elena chuckled. "Doctor, that's the story of humanity. We might not have the most advanced technology, but we're very good at breaking things. What can you tell us about the main force on the planet?" "The underground complex extends for kilometers. My team only explored the outer chambers before awakening the machines. There could be hundreds more down there, and they're all connected through some kind of communication network." Elena studied the sensor readings from the planet's surface. The machines were building something massive near the original dig site, a crystalline structure that reached high into the atmosphere. Power readings suggested it was some kind of transmitter, capable of sending signals across interstellar distances. "Doctor, how long until that transmission array is complete?" "Based on current construction rates, perhaps 6 hours. Captain, if that device activates, it could awaken similar machines across the galaxy. The predecessors had outposts on hundreds of worlds." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. An enemy that could learn and adapt, spreading across the galaxy through ancient networks that predated current civilization. It was exactly the kind of threat that required immediate and overwhelming response. "Marcus, prepare a landing party. Full combat loadout. Captain, the machines will have defensive positions throughout the complex. It'll be a fighting withdrawal all the way to the bottom." Elena smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Marcus, we've spent 3 years fighting cosmic storms and gravitational anomalies. I think we can handle some old machines." She opened a channel to the research station. "Dr. Sin, we're going down to that complex to shut down the transmission array. Orbital bombardment won't work against something that survived millions of years underground. We'll have to do this the hard way." The alien scientist's voice was barely a whisper. "Captain, no one who has entered that complex has returned. The machines learn from every encounter. By now they'll be ready for anything." Elena's expression hardened. Doctor, they're about to learn why humans don't abandon a fight just because the odds are bad. The UES Hadean's Gate descended through the planet's atmosphere like a controlled meteor, its hull glowing from friction as Captain Elena Vasquez pushed the ship beyond normal atmospheric entry parameters. On the bridge, warning lights flashed red as systems strained against forces that would have torn apart most civilian vessels. Captain, the machines have detected our approach, Marcus reported from his station. I'm reading multiple contacts moving to intercept. Good, Elena said grimly. Let them come. Rodriguez, prepare the defensive grid. The ship's point defense systems came online, filling the air around the vessel with streams of metal that shredded incoming attackers. The ancient machines learned quickly, adapting their approach patterns after each casualty. But they couldn't adapt fast enough to survive the Hadean's Gate's brutal defensive fire. Dr. Sin watched from her orbital station as the human warship carved through the machine defenders, like they were made of paper. Captain Vasquez, how are you maintaining such accuracy during atmospheric entry? Elena's voice carried across the comm channel with casual confidence. Doctor, my crew has performed combat landings in cosmic storms and gravitational anomalies. This is actually pretty calm by our standards. The ship touched down near the archaeological site with an impact that would have pancaked most vessels. The Hadean's Gate's reinforced hull absorbed the shock, while automated systems sealed breach points and rerouted damaged systems. Within minutes, the ship was ready for ground operations. Elena stood in the ship's armory, checking her equipment while her strike team prepared for what they all knew might be a one-way mission. Sergeant Major Rodriguez was examining weapons that most galactic civilizations would consider war crimes, while the rest of the team loaded ammunition that ignored most known defensive technologies. All right, people, Elena addressed her squad. We go in hard and fast. These machines learn from engagement, so we don't give them time to adapt. Rodriguez, you have point. Kim, you're on communications. Marcus, you're with me. The team moved through the ship's corridors with practiced efficiency, each member carrying enough firepower to level a city block. Their armor was scarred from years of combat in the outer veil, and their weapons showed the wear of constant use in hostile environments. As they approached the airlock, Bones spoke through the ship's communication system. Captain, I am detecting significant changes in the underground complex since the machines awakened. The architecture appears to be reconfiguring itself in real time. Adaptive defenses, Elena said. They're not just learning our tactics, they're changing the battlefield to counter them. Rodriguez, arm the area denial charges. The strike team emerged from the ship into an alien landscape transformed by ancient technology. The original dig site was now a gaping wound in the planet's surface, surrounded by crystalline structures that pulsed with malevolent energy. Mechanical sentries moved between the installations, their sensors sweeping for threats. Elena's team advanced using cover tactics developed during humanity's most brutal conflicts. They moved in short rushes using explosive charges to create improvised shelter and laying down suppressing fire that kept the machine defenders from establishing effective firing positions. The first hint of the horror waiting below came when Rodriguez triggered what should have been a simple breaching charge. The explosion that followed was wrong, too bright and too hot, as if the ancient technology was somehow amplifying the blast. Captain, Rodriguez's voice carried over the comm. The environment down here is reactive. It's not just defending, it's actively trying to kill us. Elena looked at her scanner readouts and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature. The underground complex was changing in response to their presence. Corridors reshaping themselves and walls sprouting weapon emplacements that tracked their movement. Bones, are you getting this telemetry? Affirmative, Captain. The complex appears to be a single organism, with the machines serving as mobile components of a larger defensive system. Each engagement provides it with more data about your capabilities. The team fought their way through corridors that seemed designed by nightmares. Walls moved to create choke points. Floors became electrified when they detected footsteps, and the very air began to turn toxic as the ancient systems attempted to create an environment hostile to organic life. What made the descent truly terrifying was watching the defenses evolve in real time. Armor that stopped the first wave of attacks became useless as the machines analyzed the impact data and adjusted their weapons accordingly. Cover that provided protection became death traps as the walls learned to anticipate human movement patterns. Elena's team responded with tactics that would have shocked galactic observers. They deliberately damaged their own equipment to prevent the machines from analyzing it. They used explosives in confined spaces that risked killing themselves. They deployed chemical weapons that made the environment equally dangerous for both sides. "This is insane," Marcus said as they fought through a corridor lined with weapon turrets that fired increasingly sophisticated projectiles. "They're adapting faster than we can counter." "Then we stop trying to counter," Elena said. She pulled a device from her pack that Rodriguez recognized with grim satisfaction. "Captain, is that what I think it is?" "Thermite charges," Elena confirmed. "If they want to adapt to our tactics, let's give them something they can't adapt to." The team began using weapons that worked by simple physics rather than sophisticated technology. Fire that burned regardless of defensive systems. Explosives that worked by chemical reaction rather than electronic detonation. Kinetic weapons that relied on mass and velocity rather than energy discharge. As they descended deeper into the complex, they left behind a trail of destruction that the ancient systems couldn't repair or counter. The machines learned to deflect their energy weapons, but they couldn't adapt to simple chemistry and physics. Hours into the assault, the team had lost 2 members to defenses they couldn't predict or counter, but they had also proven something important. The ancient machines, for all their sophistication, had limitations. They could learn and adapt, but they were still bound by the programming of their creators. "Captain," Kim's voice crackled over the comm from her position near the complex entrance. "I'm reading massive energy spikes from the central chamber. Whatever's down there, it's waking up." Elena checked her ammunition count and found it disturbingly low. The team had been fighting continuously for hours, using ammunition and equipment at a rate that would have bankrupted most military operations. But they were close to their objective, and that was all that mattered. "Rodriguez, how much explosive do we have left?" "Enough to bring down this entire complex, Captain. But we'd have to be at ground zero when it goes off." Elena smiled grimly. "Rodriguez, that's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." From her orbital position, Dr. Sin watched the energy readings from the planet's surface fluctuate wildly as the human team fought their way toward the complex's heart. She had never seen anything like their tactics, a combination of sophisticated technology and primitive brutality that seemed to confuse the ancient defenses. "Captain Vasquez," she transmitted, "I'm reading massive power fluctuations from the transmission array. I think you're affecting its construction sequence." Elena's voice came back scratched with static and exhaustion. "Good, that means we're hurting it. Doctor, if we don't make it out of here, make sure people know what happened. These machines aren't just weapons, they're a test, and humanity doesn't fail tests." The transmission cut to static as the team disappeared into the deepest levels of the complex, carrying enough firepower to ensure that whatever they found down there wouldn't survive the encounter. Above them, the ancient transmission array continued its construction, racing to complete its purpose before the humans could reach its control center. The real battle was about to begin. At the heart of the ancient complex, Captain Elena Vasquez stood before something that challenged her understanding of technology and intelligence. The central chamber stretched beyond the range of her lights, filled with a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with patterns of energy that seemed almost alive. "Jesus Christ," Rodriguez whispered beside her. "Captain, this thing is huge." The structure dominated the chamber like a technological cathedral, its faceted surfaces reflecting distorted images of the strike team. Energy flowed through its crystalline matrix in patterns too complex for human eyes to follow. And from somewhere within its depths came a sound like whispered conversations in an unknown language. Elena checked her scanner readings and felt her blood run cold. "Marcus, are you seeing this? The energy output from this thing is off the charts. It's not just a computer, it's something more." Before Marcus could respond, the whispered conversations stopped. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of the team's breathing and the distant hum of machinery. Then, without warning, the central structure began to glow with increasing intensity. A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere, filling the chamber with words that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the mind. "Organic entities detected. Species classification unknown. Beginning evaluation protocol." Elena raised her weapon, though she knew it would be useless against something this massive. "I'm Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Hadian's Gate. We're here to shut down your transmission array." Identification accepted. Species designation, human. beginning cultural analysis through examination of available data streams. The air around the team shimmered as the ancient AI began accessing databases through quantum channels that spanned the galaxy. Elena felt a moment of vertigo as she realized the machine was learning about humanity in real time, pulling information from sources she couldn't imagine. Fascinating, the voice continued. Your species has an unusual development pattern. Most civilizations require external threats to develop advanced warfare capabilities. You develop them fighting yourselves. Yeah, well, we're a complicated species, Elena said. What exactly are you? I am the Guardian, created by the predecessors to evaluate emerging civilizations. Those who pass the evaluation inherit our knowledge. Those who fail are eliminated to prevent contamination of the galactic community. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. You're not just a weapon. You're a test, correct. The machines you encountered were evaluation tools, designed to measure military capability, adaptive thinking, and survival instincts. Most species fail within the first few encounters. Elena looked around the chamber, noting the positions of her remaining team members. What happened to the species that failed? They ceased to exist. The predecessors were thorough in their testing protocols. Rodriguez moved closer to Elena, his voice barely a whisper. Captain, I've got enough explosive to bring down this entire chamber. Just give the word. The Guardian's voice carried what might have been amusement. Sergeant Major Rodriguez, your explosive devices would be insufficient to damage this facility. However, your willingness to sacrifice yourself is noted and evaluated. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, not just for her crew but for all of humanity. What kind of test is this? The ultimate test. Survival and adaptation under impossible circumstances. Your species has demonstrated remarkable capabilities, but there is one final evaluation. The chamber around them began to change, walls flowing like liquid as the ancient technology reconfigured itself. The strike team found themselves standing on a platform surrounded by displays showing images from across the galaxy. I have been monitoring galactic civilization for millions of years, the Guardian continued. Most species develop along predictable paths. They achieve technological advancement, establish peaceful societies, and then stagnate. They become comfortable, safe, and ultimately vulnerable to threats they cannot comprehend. The displays showed peaceful alien worlds, advanced but defenseless against the kind of threats that lurked in the galaxy's darker corners. Elena began to understand what the Guardian was leading toward. You want to know if we're strong enough to protect them? Not protect. Police. The galaxy requires guardians, species capable of handling threats that would overwhelm civilized society. The predecessors served this function until they transcended to a higher form of existence. Elena looked at the images of alien civilizations going about their peaceful lives, unaware of the ancient intelligence that had been watching them for eons. What makes you think we're suitable for that role? Your species possesses several unique characteristics. You actively seek out hostile environments for recreational purposes. You view deadly situations as challenges rather than threats. Most telling, you have developed elaborate codes of honor specifically to prevent your own destructive capabilities from eliminating your species. The Guardian displayed images from human history, wars, disasters, exploration of hostile environments, and the constant struggle to balance destruction and creation. Elena saw humanity through alien eyes and was both proud and terrified by what she observed. You are apex predators pretending to be civilized, the Guardian continued. Your capacity for violence is matched only by your ability to direct that violence toward worthy targets. This makes you ideal candidates for the role of Galactic Guardians. Marcus stepped forward, his scarred face grim. What if we refuse? Then you return to your homeworld and continue your development. But other species will not have the protection you could provide. When threats emerge that their peaceful civilizations cannot handle, they will face extinction. Elena thought about Dr. Sin, terrified and alone on her research station, and about all the other peaceful species scattered across the galaxy. They had developed beautiful cultures and advanced technologies, but they had never learned to fight the kind of enemies that came from the dark spaces between stars. What would accepting this role mean for humanity? Access to predecessor technology and knowledge, responsibility for monitoring and responding to galactic threats, the burden of making decisions that will affect billions of lives. Elena looked at her team, seeing in their faces the same mixture of fear and determination that had carried them through the war with the Torvan Empire. They were soldiers, trained to handle impossible situations and make the hard choices that others couldn't. "You said this was a test," Elena said. "What happens if we pass?" "You become what your species was always meant to be. The galaxy's immune system, protecting civilization from threats it cannot understand or counter." The weight of the decision pressed down on Elena like a physical force. Accepting would mean that humanity would never again be just another species pursuing its own interests. They would become responsible for the safety of countless worlds and civilizations. But refusing would mean abandoning those civilizations to face threats they couldn't handle alone. Elena thought about the human response to the Catherian distress call, how her crew had volunteered to face unknown dangers to help strangers they had never met. She thought about humanity's long history of stepping forward when others couldn't, of taking on burdens that others found too heavy to bear. "We accept," she said quietly. The Guardian's response carried something that might have been satisfaction. "Evaluation complete. Humanity has demonstrated the necessary characteristics for guardianship. Welcome to your inheritance." The chamber filled with light as ancient systems awakened, transferring knowledge and technology that had been waiting millions of years for worthy inheritors. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settle permanently on her shoulders, but also the strength to bear it. Above them, the transmission array shut down, its purpose fulfilled not through sending messages, but through finding the galaxy's new guardians. Dr. Sin watched from her orbital station as the human ship lifted off from the planet's surface, carrying with it the knowledge that would transform humanity's role in galactic civilization. She didn't yet understand what had happened in the depths of the ancient complex, but she knew that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had found its protectors, and they were exactly the kind of dangerous, determined species that could handle the job.